Well, good evening out there. Well, the sun has slowly made its way down once more, and we can finally get comfortable and have a chat. My name is Eddie Booze, and this is Exit the Matrix. Throughout my life, I have traversed my share of rabbit holes, and like many of you out there, I have seen and experienced some things that I simply cannot explain. I invite you all to consider that this world may not be exactly what we've been told it is, and that maybe, just maybe, we haven't even scratched the surface of the absolute truths that lie before us. That being said, let's get into today's episode. I'd like to introduce my guest today, my pastor, Pastor Steve Bogdan. How you doing, Pastor?
Doing fine.
Thanks for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Glad to be here.
I've been wanting to do this for quite a while. I have got so many questions. I kind of found my way back towards the Lord a few years ago, and I found your church, our church now, a while ago, and it's just been an absolute blessing. But there's always these questions, there's always, if you're ever on social media and you're ever scrolling through shorts or reels or anything like that, or TikTok, then you always see these conspiracy theories, that are out there, So I thought that today I'd do something a little special, and I'd put us together and we would do something along the lines of just go over some biblical conspiracy theories that have been presented, that I've kind of heard in the past. And I just wanted to kind of, just explore some of them with you and just kind of go over and discuss some of these things that kind of some of these are very fringe, like ideas, just to throw that out there. But, I just thought thought we'd explore some of these. How's that sound?
Sounds great.
All right, cool. Let me throw some of these. Let's just jump right into it here. So I'm gonna throw some of these at you. So the first was that Cain was the son of Satan. The serpent seed theory is what they call it. That the theory is that Eve laid with the serpent, Satan, and Cain was the result. And Abel was Adam's son, making Cain and Abel half brothers. Now the key verse used to, back this theory up was Genesis 3:15, where it says, "I will put enmity between your seed and her seed." The conspiracy, obviously, is that this serpent seed bloodline continues through secret societies, possibly tied to elites or even the Antichrist lineage today. So, and this is actually the origins of this theory actually were promoted in some Gnostic texts and controversial groups like Christian Identity, which I'm actually not sure what that is. But what do you think about this particular theory? Cain was the son of Satan.
All right. So, the story that we have of Cain and Abel in Genesis doesn't say anything about that. Cain and Abel are presented as the sons of Adam and Eve.
Okay.
Cain being the older and Abel being the younger. And so I really don't know where that idea would have come from. Satan is a spirit being, and he is, as a spirit being, Jesus said the angels neither marry nor are given in marriage. And so they don't procreate. And so technically it would be impossible by what Jesus said for Satan to have procreated and to have had a son.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so we have the Genesis is one of the books of Moses.
Okay.
And Moses lived around 1400, 1300 BC.
Now, what do you mean one of the books of Moses? He wrote Genesis?
He did. Yeah, he wrote the first 5 books of the Bible called the Pentateuch.
Okay.
Right. And so part of the Pentateuch, he was there for it to happen, saw it happen. But Genesis, obviously, he wasn't there.
Right.
And so it is believed that that God revealed these things to Moses when he was out for 40 years in the desert. After he had killed an Egyptian and ran for his life, then he was out in the desert, on the backside of the desert, it says, and for 40 years. And it's believed that things were revealed to him at that time. And so, the story of Adam and Eve, it's
really in the Garden of Eden, and that whole thing was revealed to Moses in that time. And that's right. That's the belief.
Right.
Gotcha.
And then there were probably oral traditions.
Did he write
also
about that? About gaining that knowledge and information at some point? Like while he was
I don't believe there's anything in the text.
Gotcha.
That says that Moses was,
that refers to
the author.
I see.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah. But, this it's estimated that if you go by the genealogy and how long people lived, it's estimated that the Garden of Eden would have been around 4000 BC. Okay, but we know that human beings have been on the planet a lot longer than that.
So Garden of Eden would have been a real place that people would have been able to go and visit.
Right. Yeah, they doubted that it was real. But since we have now underground radar, they can tell where the 4 rivers that are described, where they were, actually.
Interesting.
And over in the Mesopotamia.
Interesting.
Or what they called the Fertile Crescent. But, the Bible tells a story, and let's say it starts at 4000 BC and goes to, roughly 100 AD. But, it was very limited. What the Bible says is very limited to the area around the Mediterranean, right? The furthest south it would go would be Egypt or Ethiopia. Furthest north it would go would probably be Rome. And so just that specific area around there. So it's kind of limited. And there's nothing about Chinese history or Indian history or anything like, or Scandinavia in the Bible. And so it's kind of limited in space, also limited in time, as far as from maybe 4000 BC until 100 AD. So it's very limited. And for example, we know that there were people that came to this continent from Asia as long as 13,000 BC. And there's artifacts from that old. So the Bible is kind of limited in its time and in its space.
Right.
And then, in the last 50 years, the last 100 years, they've gone into being able to explore a way out in space. And that was not known by the Bible folks.
Right.
Right. To go out to the ends of the universe, or what we think is the universe. And then what was not known to anybody was going into the quantum.
Right.
The quantum realm, the subatomic particles and stuff like that. But it's interesting that the subatomic particles behave in ways that are consistent with what the Bible talks about as far as what's possible. And so I think human understanding is expanding very rapidly.
Sure.
And I think that when people look at stories like Cain and Abel, they want to try to see something in it that's maybe not there.
Right.
Because human beings, they love to hope that there's more than just getting up and going to work every day and coming home and making dinner and going to bed. Right. Right.
I think it's and I think people just have fun with speculation in general, speculating about, certain, ideas and, just like the wonder of what if that happened? What if that's true? I think a lot of people have creative minds, and even if they don't have creative minds themselves, they enjoy the creative, the entertain, and being entertained. I think a lot of these people entertain these ideas because they enjoy being entertained.
Right.
If that makes sense.
And some of them happen.
Of sure.
Some of them, like, what does it say? But the difference between a conspiracy theorist and
a conspiracy analyst?
Yeah,
just kidding.
Is about 6 months these days.
Right, exactly. Yeah,
So-
but I'm and as far if we're talking about conspiracy theories in general, yeah, there's a fair amount that I mean, I run a conspiracy theory podcast here. You know what I mean? We did a 2-hour episode about the Warren Commission. You know what I mean? And then all the JFK files just came out like a week after that. You know what I mean? So like, yeah, I definitely understand that conspiracies are absolutely real. I mean, like, you know, there's tons of examples I could give. I wasn't going to go into a few, but you guys know what's up. You know, if I had, never mind. Anyway, so all right, so let's jump into the next one. Okay, Pastor. All right, so what would you prefer I call you here in this episode? Pastor Steve?
You can just call me Steve. It's
Steve.
fine.
All right,
Yeah.
awesome. I love it. All right, so the second theory is that the Book of Enoch was suppressed for revealing too much. Now, this theory is that the Book of Enoch, which details angels and Nephilim and visions of heaven, was excluded from most Bibles because it reveals cosmic truths. The conspiracy is that early church leaders excluded it to avoid contradictions of any sort. So and I've heard of the Book of Enoch. I've never read it, never really looked into it, but can you tell me a little bit about this particular theory that the Book of Enoch was suppressed for revealing too much? And who would it have been suppressed by? Was it the Vatican, I guess? Or it says early church leaders here.
Right. So Enoch was a man, he's mentioned in Genesis.
Yeah.
He was the 7th generation from Adam. And all it says about him was that he walked with God, and then he was not. And so we believe that he may have been one of two people in the biblical record that did not die, that he was taken from the earth. And so,
you mean like they describe that would maybe happen in the rapture?
Well, just that he was taken to heaven without dying.
Gotcha.
It says that he walked with God and was not. The other one was Elijah, who went up to heaven in a chariot of fire.
Okay.
And so during the what's called the Great Tribulation period, there will be two prophets who appear back on the earth, and they are preaching. And we believe that those are Enoch and Elijah. Because they did not die, and the Antichrist kills them, and then God raises them back to life and then snatches them back up to heaven. But Enoch was a godly man. He did write a book, and Jesus refers to the book of Enoch. He refers to Enoch, and the book of Jude talks about Enoch and the things that he said.
Really?
But
interesting.
The early church leaders, they were selective about what went into the scriptures, what went into the 66 books that we have. Of course, the Catholic Bible has more books than what the Protestant Bible has.
I didn't know that.
The Protestant Bible comes from King James in 1611, and he commissioned 70 scholars to translate the Bible. The Septuagint, the Old Testament, was already had been translated into Greek, which was called the Septuagint, and then of course the New Testament books were coming out of Antioch, and they were in Greek as well, been translated into Greek. But there's about 1,500 New Testament manuscripts that they used to come up with this Bible commissioned by King James in 1611. And so there were debates about what would come in or not. There are other gospels other than the four. There's the Gospel of Thomas, different things. There was a big debate about the book of James, because James talks about works, doing good things rather than just being saved by trusting Christ.
Right.
So they debated about James, and they debated about the Book of Revelation, because it's pretty weird. You know, it's got a lot of stuff that what we're thinking Enoch was excluded for. There's a lot of stuff in Revelation that talks about the same kind of stuff.
Interesting.
But the Book of Enoch, I've read it, and
oh, you have?
Yeah, and it doesn't.
No kidding.
It doesn't say anything that is inconsistent with what we understand about the Scriptures. So even though it's not in the 66 books, it's available, and people can pull it up and read it if they want to.
They can.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, okay, so we can just find it online then.
I haven't looked for it online, but I'm sure it's available.
Interesting.
If you search for it. Yeah.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
the Book of Enoch. I'm sure you can find everything online. So, all right. All right. So all right. So this next one is that biblical giants still exist or are hidden, and the theory is that Nephilim, or giant offspring, survived the flood or returned post-flood and still exist in remote areas, possibly in stasis or underground. The conspiracy is that governments or black ops programs have covered up discoveries of giant bones or remains. And modern sightings, some people report, like the Kandahar giant story, and some soldiers claim that they've encountered massive humanoids and things of that type. What do you think about this? This biblical giants still exist?
Mm-hmm. Well, there is scripture about giants.
Okay.
And the first ones were the ones who were there before the flood, and they were called the Nephilim. And so this was a race that was procreated, and sort of the concept of a god. You know, you have humans, and then you have gods, and then you have demigods.
Right.
Demigods would be part human
part God,
part supernatural.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. To me,
angel, whatever, demon, angel.
Yeah.
Nephilim.
Right. And so it's believed they were a hybrid race that contaminated the human race, and that's why it says that Noah was perfect in his generations. That is, that his bloodline was not contaminated with these beings. And so, obviously, in the flood, only 8 people survived, and that was Noah and his family. And so, we don't see anything else about giants after that until you get to David and Goliath.
Really?
And Goliath, it's believed, was 9 feet tall. And so, if you use the measurement that's used in the Bible, he was like a foot shorter than a basketball goal. So he was a big guy. And then we have people with abnormalities today that are pretty big. Remember Andre the Giant?
Of course.
Yeah, he's a big guy.
Yeah.
And so then we were watching, Reacher the other day, and Reacher's a big guy. And then in the episode, there's a guy that's like a foot
even bigger than him,
foot
right?
Taller than him. So there's big guys around. But
yeah.
I think if there were, people are always looking for Bigfoot or Sasquatch, but I think if these things were still on the earth, that somebody would have found them. And of course, like you're saying, there's reports. I haven't heard about the Kandahar one. What's that?
Yeah, the Kandahar giant, there's, as far as I remember, it was Kandahar, Afghanistan. A group of American soldiers went into this cave to extract somebody or some leader, some rebel group. I'm not sure if it was Taliban or ISIS or something like that. But apparently they went in and they encountered this giant with like red hair, and like it apparently just like, I'm not sure if they were killed or injured, but there was a fair amount of conspiracy surrounding that. Let me see. Kandahar giant. I'm actually going to look it up. That's the beautiful thing about having this little thing at your fingertips where you can just kind of look it up.
Right.
So the Kandahar giant is a modern legend or conspiracy theory that originated on the internet, particularly in fringe forums and paranormal circles. Here's a breakdown of the story. Okay, so the tale first gained attention around the mid-2000s. See, I don't like that little disclaimer that it threw up there right off the bat. Like, I don't like ChatGPT. ChatGPT, you're starting to get under my skin. All right, telling us what's conspiracy theories and what's not. It didn't originate.
It calls it a tale.
It originated in Kandahar with the soldiers. All right, bro. All right. So the story is that the tale first gained attention around the mid-2000s when a man claiming to be a retired U.S. soldier, often referred to by the alias Mr. K, came forward with an extraordinary account. According to the story, see, that's another disclaimer. ChatGPT is going hard trying to make us not believe. It knows we're on a conspiracy theory podcast, and it's like, Mm-hmm. All right, here we go. In 2002, during the war in Afghanistan, a U.S. Special Forces team went missing in a remote region near Kandahar. Another team was sent to investigate and reportedly encountered a giant humanoid creature over 12 feet tall with red hair, 6 fingers on each hand, and 2 sets of teeth. The creature was said to be extremely aggressive and killed one of the soldiers with a spear before being shot and killed by the rest of the unit. The body was allegedly airlifted away by a military helicopter and taken to a secret location. The incident was supposedly covered up by the U.S. government. Now, the mythology, the story ties into ancient myths and biblical references to the Nephilim, giants said to be the offspring of angels and humans, like you were just talking about, demigods. The Kandahar giant is often described in a way that resembles these mythological beings. And yeah, so that's basically the idea behind the Kandahar giant story.
Gotcha.
So, but yeah, I mean, I think that giants are a big point of interest for a lot of people who are into conspiracy theories and who are into kind of the supernatural and unknown. I think giants, because there is mention of them in biblical references, because we've seen with our own eyes, like you said, these people that have what we know to be physical abnormalities today, but not necessarily may be physical abnormalities back then when giants existed. They just may not be as prevalent as they were back then, or maybe they're just in hiding. I mean, maybe they do exist in huge numbers, but maybe they're just in hiding. Maybe they live in like cave systems and things like that. I don't know. I'm just saying that it is a very interesting one,
Right.
a very interesting theory about these massive humanoids.
Yeah, especially if there can be such a thing as a hybrid.
Right.
A human being hybrid with something else.
Yeah, exactly. Because then you think, okay, well, you think these giants just physical abnormalities, or are they offspring of of angels or demons or whatever supernatural, like you said. All right, so let's jump into the next one. So the next one is that Earth was ruled by angels before Adam. This is called the gap theory. Now, the theory is that between Genesis 1:1 and Genesis 1:2, there was a pre-Adamic world ruled by angels, which was destroyed due to a heavenly rebellion. And the conspiracy says this gap is ignored in mainstream Christianity to simplify theology, but it explains dinosaurs, Atlantis, and the fall of Lucifer. Now, some say Lucifer ruled Earth and was dethroned by divine judgment. Now, I don't know very much about scripture. I don't know as much about scripture as I should, or as I like, as I'm, should. But anyway, my question here is that okay, so this says it explains the fall of Lucifer. My question is that, doesn't the Bible talk about Lucifer being cast out of heaven? Okay, so why would this theory explain the fall of Lucifer? That's my question.
All right, so that theory, it said that it was...
there was a pre-Adamic world ruled by angels, which was destroyed due to a heavenly rebellion.
Okay, it said that it was like outside of mainstream Christianity.
Yes.
But that's not really outside of mainstream Christianity.
That's what I thought. When I read this, I thought the same thing. I thought, wasn't there a heavenly rebellion that Lucifer led, and that's why he was cast out of heaven?
Right. This is in Isaiah, chapter 14. And it describes, we believe that God's host, the angels, were created by him to serve him. And they're kind of like an army where they have their generals and then their colonels and their majors and captains and on down.
Right,
There's a hierarchy
the ranks.
there. And it's believed that the three top angels were Gabriel, who is a messenger, and Michael, who is a warrior, and then Lucifer, which was a worshiping angel.
Interesting.
And so, but it does say that Lucifer means light bearer, and that he did rebel against God at a point and was cast out. He wanted to gain God's throne. He wanted God's throne.
Okay.
And so he was cast out and took his third of the angels with him, which became demons.
Interesting.
And so, now the ratio would be 2 to 1, 2 angels for 1 demon. But we do see the effects of demons on the earth. I've had experiences with people who were demon-possessed.
Really?
That knew things that there's no way they could have known, and behaved in ways that there was no way they could have behaved. And so I believe strongly that there are demons on the earth as well. But Lucifer himself was cast down to the earth. And so he's here on the planet. And we know, from paleontology, that it's likely that there were human beings and animals, dinosaurs on the earth before 4000 BC. Because you read the genealogies in the New Testament, it traces back from Christ. One of them traces back from Christ to Adam. And then if you add up those years that those people lived, it comes out about 4000 BC. But we believe there were people here before Adam, and there were obviously animals and dinosaurs and things like this that were here before 4000 BC. Now, Jesus, when he was confronted by Satan, Jesus spent 40 days out in the wilderness.
Yeah.
And then he was confronted by Satan, and Satan was tempting him and gave him 3 temptations. And one of those temptations, he took him to a high mountain, and Satan showed Jesus all the kingdoms of the world. And he said, these kingdoms are mine, and I can give them to whoever I want. And what you need to do, Jesus, if you want to rule the world, you want to be the Messiah, then I'll make it quick and easy for you. All you have to do is bow down and worship me. And it's interesting, Jesus refused to bow down and worship him, obviously, but it's interesting that Jesus didn't argue with him. When Satan said, the world is mine, I have authority over the world, Jesus didn't argue with him. And so we believe that Satan was cast down from heaven to the earth. It does say that the earth was watery chaos at a point. And we believe that Satan was the serpent in the Garden of Eden that corrupted Adam and Eve. And so he was here on the planet still. After whatever happened, after being cast down, he was here, and he was allowed a measure of authority from God to be able to speak and to talk to the people that God had just made. Okay, and we believe that the authority that Satan had was because Adam and Eve had abdicated their authority. that God had given them, because he gave them dominion over the world. And then when Satan did what he did and corrupted them, then it is believed that he got part of their authority. And so Satan is very, very powerful. He knows things, and he has a hatred for God and for God's people. And the demons that work for him are kind of the same way. But the scripture in Revelation, it describes Satan being in front of God's throne and accusing you and me day and night. And so that's what Satan likes to do. He likes to get us to tempt us, get us to do stuff that's wrong, and then basically kick us when we're down. And so he's up there accusing us, and God at a point gets tired of it. And Michael is there, God's warrior is there, and he's God's bouncer, as it were. And so Michael, at a point, grabs Satan and throws him out of heaven. And he comes down to this earth, and it's during the time of the Great Tribulation, and he goes to persecute, first of all, the Jewish people, and then the Christian people. He goes after them to persecute them. And so that's kind of the story of Lucifer.
But him being cast down.
Right.
Okay. All right. So that's not necessarily ignored by mainstream Christianity then. So there is... Okay. Okay, cool. Thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate that, because when I read that, I thought the exact same thing. I thought, wait a minute, like this is parallel to like the stories of that that I've heard of Lucifer.
Right.
So
but this is why God is so gracious and compassionate toward us, because he put us here. He put us in this world with a devil in it. And so he knows we're going to have problems.
He knows that we're going to be tempted. He knows that we're going to be...
He knows we're going to be deceived.
Right.
And so basically he says, okay, because I put you in a world that had a devil in it.
With free will.
A bunch of devils in it. Then basically you have carte blanche for my grace, my mercy, my forgiveness. For anything that happens to you, I'm just going to cover it. And that's what Jesus did on the cross.
Right. And you know what's... interesting is that, like, I think it was like last year, right around this time, actually, it was Easter, I think, when we were talking about him riding into what town was that he rode into on a donkey?
Jerusalem.
He rode into Jerusalem on a donkey. I think we were talking about that. It was right around this time last year that we were talking about this, and it dawned on me. It's something kind of like, I had like an epiphany of like kind of what you're talking about here, is that God's grace. One of the reasons that like it dawned on me that like God's grace could even be given to us, because I've struggled with this. Like I have some things that I'm, that I have a hard time forgiving myself for in my past, and it kind of dawned on me one day that like God is God and didn't have a reference for what humans feel and go through with the guilt, and after Adam and Eve taking from the tree of knowledge, and now that we are afflicted with knowing and and being having all that, that only through having sent Jesus here to experience life as a man could he understand fully what his creations are actually going through, because then he got to experience it himself.
Right.
Do you see what I'm saying? And then he got to experience the temptation. He experienced the deceit. He experienced the anger and the everything that we go through every day. All the little things that happen to us every day. Like, that's one of the reasons that kind of dawned on me that like he could find the compassion to forgive us, because he understands through that having his son here on earth. Am I right about that?
You're exactly right.
Okay, so it kind of didn't that didn't dawn on me until I'm 43 years old. Like, so it took me all of, like I said, this time. But
and that's in the book of Hebrews, where it says that Jesus learned things when he was here.
Interesting.
Yeah,
so he didn't come all knowing what we feel and omnipotent in every single way of like what man goes through. Right. Interesting. So he actually learned what it's like to be a man while on earth.
That's right.
And got to understand and have a reference for it, and very interesting. Okay.
Yeah. And then to become a gracious and compassionate high priest.
I love it.
For us is what it says.
Awesome. Awesome. All right, so this next one is interesting. I thought this one was kind of interesting when I was reading it here. So the Antichrist will come from artificial intelligence is what this one says. The Antichrist will come from artificial intelligence. The theory is that the image of the beast that speaks and controls buying and selling in Revelation is actually a future AI system. Now, the conspiracy is that big tech or global elites are creating the infrastructure, digital ID, central bank, digital currency to fulfill biblical prophecy. So, and this kind of rides on the backs of like modern fears of people like with like things like social credit scores and like, you know what I mean? Like we were talking about the digital banking system and things like that. You know, that's kind of what we're talking about here, and that the Antichrist will essentially emerge through that. The image of the beast that speaks and controls buying and selling in Revelation is actually a future system that will be put in place or comes from that system.
One of the prophets, the Old Testament prophets that talk about the end of the world was Daniel. And Daniel said that at the time of the end, he said two things. He said that people would run to and fro and that knowledge would increase.
Interesting.
And so the transportation that we have right now, I mean, you can be anywhere in the world within
a day or two.
Yeah. And so we see that. And then also they say that knowledge is doubling every 12 hours.
Interesting.
Now. And so the things that people know, the access to information systems that they have. And then the Antichrist is the one who's presented as ruling the world, or starts off trying to rule the world at the beginning of the 7 years of tribulation. And then by the end, he's, pretty much doing whatever he wants. And he has this other one that's with him that's called a false prophet. And so the way the world is described when the Antichrist takes control is a totalitarian state where people are absolutely controlled. And nobody can buy or sell without having this mark. Of course, if you can't buy or sell, I mean, you're not going to have a job, you're going to have a place to live, so you're going to be under severe persecution if you're not with the system that they are talking about. Now, even in my lifetime, that was not possible. It was not possible for one person or even a small group of people to absolutely control the whole world. And we started getting, credit cards to scan at the grocery store and stuff like that. But then I thought, well, somebody living out in the middle of Africa, they can't control them. I mean, they're just trading chickens and stuff like that. Right?
South America and places like that where absolutely.
Yeah. But now look what's happened. I mean, this electronic economic system that we have is pretty much gone all over the world.
Right.
And it is in a situation right now, like you say, with the social credit scores in China, where if they don't like something that you said or something that you did,
shut you out of everything.
Yeah, there's a pastor in China right now that had been in prison, and they let him out of prison, but they refused to give him any kind of a number to identify himself. So he can't identify himself in China, can't have a bank account.
That's crazy.
He basically doesn't exist.
That's coming. America, we need to watch, that's what I'm talking about with this central banking system. They don't like something you say on social media, and they decide to shut your bank off or, just take a certain amount of money out. You know, PayPal, a few years ago, PayPal had a thing they were proposing. I'm not sure if it ever happened or if it maybe went through and then got turned off. They were proposing having a thing where, like, if they felt that you said something that they didn't like online, something that they deemed, you know, misogynist or bigoted in any way, they would fine you $2,600 out of your bank account that is linked to PayPal. Look this up. Like, I'm not. Like this was, I'm not making, you know, this isn't coming from my head here. This was a thing that like was proposed and came like got massively run down by people, you know, on social media. We're just like, dude, no, you know, people were doing videos on YouTube about it all the time. People were not happy about it. So I don't think it didn't go through, but but yes, this is what we're talking about. You know what I mean? Like, well. And they'll be able to do it, and they will do it. They will. It's not an if. Like you said, it's happening right now in other countries. So, do we want that here in the United States of America, or do we want to flourish? Do we want to get off, or do we want to put our money into, you know, precious metals or cryptocurrencies or anything that's not tied to the Fed? You know. So, I mean, that just makes us financially independent, which the government definitely doesn't want. You know, that's why they've been trying to tax crypto gains and, you know, things along those lines and really kind of get that under control, you know, because they really can't, you know. Right.
Well, just look at what's gone on politically just in the last 6 months or the last year.
It's been wild. It's been crazy.
It's the big issue has been globalism.
Yeah.
All right, globalism.
And it's getting rejected by more and more countries.
Right. The EU is all in for globalism. Canada's all in for globalism.
Well,
and there's a lot of people in our country that wanted to go in that direction. But the cog in the wheel right now is Donald Trump.
There's a couple. I mean, Javier Milei from Argentina, and there's a guy, I believe it's Denmark, Poland. You know what I mean? Like and there's a couple people from. I saw somebody who's a representative in the UK who's like over it too. You know, there's a lot of that going on right now.
So the World Economic Forum.
Yeah, the WE, Klaus Schwab.
Yeah, and that dude. Trilateral Commission and all of those.
Yeah.
They're all headed in
Bilderberg and
in the direction of globalism.
Yeah.
Right, they want to be able to control everybody in the world.
We talked about this. We had an episode about the Georgia Guidestones recently. I'm not sure if you know what the Georgia Guidestones are.
I do.
Okay, so we did an episode where we showed them being blown up and everything, and the episode we talked about extensively, talked about and showed a video of Klaus Schwab talking to Bill Gates about depopulating the world, about bringing the world population down by using vaccines and by using God, I can't remember, a couple of other things too. So it's like, I mean, anybody who talks like in broad strokes about just like bringing the world population down by like, you know, a significant percentage, that's not something that feels ethical to me or moral or morally sound to me. That seems like that sounds nefarious as could possibly be to me.
I heard him say that. I heard Bill Gates say that.
I know. I showed a clip on here saying...
And I was going, is this like a Freudian slip?
Right. No, he is in a TED Talk talking about if we work really hard using vaccines and I can't remember what else he said, or health... he goes with reproductive health care and vaccines. He's like, we could bring the world population down by, and I can't remember what the percentage was, like 10 or 15%. Like, dude, there's 8 billion people in the world right now. You want to take 500 million people, like 500 million people, like off the planet? Like, that's a lot.
Right.
You know?
And what I say to people that want to reduce the population, why not just start with yourself?
Well, I mean, let's not promote that. You know what I mean? I mean, if people want to talk that way,
if you're
I mean,
serious,
I get, there's these, and then you see movies like Soylent Green. I don't want to ruin Soylent Green for anybody out there who's never seen Soylent Green, which, by the way, I'm realizing that there's a ton of people my age who, and anybody younger than me, I'm just going to assume that you don't know what Soylent Green is, or you've never seen the movie, unless you're like a real movie buff. But other than that, most people don't know what Soylent Green is. But there are these concepts, and I don't know if you're aware of this, but in other countries right now, there are places that you can go to self-euthanize.
Yeah, there are. Like
in Canada, I believe there's that's legal. And there's so many questions that begs that particular thing, that particular moral conundrum. But we'll get into that on a different day. We'll get through one or two more of these, and then we'll take a break, and we'll come back for episode 2. So this is going to be to be continued, you guys. This episode will be a 2-parter. This week we're going to be ending it pretty soon here, and then next week you guys will catch another one with Pastor Steve, and it will be the second part to this episode right here, you guys. So let's go ahead and get into a couple more of these. So this is one of my favorites here, Steve. So one of my absolute favorite biblical conspiracy theories is that the firmament is a literal dome over the earth. Theory: in Genesis 1, the firmament, Hebrew calls it rakia, I believe. It is a solid dome separating the waters above the earth from the earth below, from the environment that we know. The conspiracy is that NASA and governments hide the dome's existence to suppress biblical cosmology and promote globalism and evolution. Now, yeah, exactly. So, and there's tons of little things that that kind of support that. There's tons of video of all these people who are on spacewalks and have bubbles coming out of their space suit and stuff. I'll send you some. It's very, very interestingly strange. You know what I mean? Doesn't seem right. But this particular conspiracy theory spans a whole bunch of things. They have telescopic cameras now, and that's kind of where this in the early 2010s is where this conspiracy theory kind of started to gain traction here, and people started to realize that they could see much further than they were supposed to be able to see over a curve. So if the Earth was curved, then why are we able to see Mount San Jacinto from Malibu, which is 215 miles away? That should be behind thousands of feet of curvature. But we can. And again, we can see with the naked eye, we can see Chicago from across Lake Michigan on a clear day, 53 miles to the nearest point, and that should be behind 1,000 feet of curvature. We shouldn't even be able to see the top of the skyline, let alone the entire thing. You know what I mean? So, and that's just one. The curvature equation is just one of those things. It's like I said, like I said, cameras, being more stronger nowadays, and us being able to have the capability to do that. And there's tons of different things that people have kind of latched onto to kind of say okay, wait a minute here, maybe this firmament thing is real, and maybe we're not an insequential ball spinning through space that came out of the Big Bang Theory, what came out of nothing. Maybe we were created. Maybe we are the center of our known universe, and God actually put us here, and everything we know revolves around us. So, you know what I mean? So, what do we think about that? What does the mainstream Christianity say about the firmament dome versus the heliocentric model, which is stars? We're spinning around the sun at 66,000 miles an hour, and the sun's hurtling through space at 600,000 miles an hour, and we're spinning at 1,000 miles an hour, and but the North Star always stays exactly where it's at, and everything's we can't really detect motion. I mean, I mean, all I'm saying is just can we like, all right, let's explore this a little bit and just kind of see where this let's see where this lands biblically and pragmatically with you.
All right, so we start with the firmament.
Okay.
Right, which was created by the Lord in the days of creation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so it talks about the water above the heavens.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so imagine that you are a person that's never seen a spacewalk. You've never, seen a telescope to know what's out there. But then you notice that right where you are, there's water on the ground. There's water in a creek or water in a pond. And then at certain times, water starts to fall from the sky. All right? So you're going, oh, well, there's water up there. I'm breathing air right here.
Right.
But water's falling on me from up there. So, something's leaking up there.
You mean like a terrarium? You mean like an enclosed system?
No, I mean like there's clouds up there that are dropping rain.
That's what happens.
Rain on you.
That's what happens in an enclosed system.
Yeah, and
so
it
rains.
Okay.
Like
yeah.
Condensation.
There's condensation.
Right.
Right. So you're going to, if you're trying to theorize about that, then you say, there's water here, there's air here, and then there's something up there that has water in it too. Of course, they didn't know about the water cycle and things like that.
Right.
But so there's water up there. But, and I've heard some things, about the flat earth theory lately.
We should talk about it. I mean, you and I should go have lunch and discuss, because I've given it some thought, some serious thought over the last few years. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
You met Crumb, didn't you? I brought him to one of our Wednesday morning men's breakfasts that we have. You met him. He's got a flat earth channel on YouTube.
He does. Wow.
Yeah, it's very popular actually.
Okay.
Yeah,
So biblically, there's some people that claim that the people who wrote the Bible believed in the flat earth.
Sure.
But Isaiah says that God sits enthroned above the circle of the earth. And Isaiah would have no way of knowing that. But he was a prophet. And so he says that God sits enthroned above the circle of the earth.
Interesting.
And so,
dude, I so want to talk to you about flat earth theory.
Yeah. My daughter-in-law.
She's a flat earther?
She is always asking me questions about it.
I'm a flat earther. You know what's funny is years ago I was dating this middle school teacher, science teacher, and I was watching a NoFX concert. It's a punk band, and I was doing some work online. And after I got done with my work, I watched the rest of the show, and then YouTube likes to suggest things for you, And one of those things was a 24/7 flat Earth discernment channel, and I was like, What is flat earth discernment? What is this? So I popped it on and started watching it. It was a live feed, And I was less interested in the context of what was happening on the screen and more interested in the discussion that people were having during the how they have the live chat.
Right.
People were, and I'm at this point, I'm a geocentrist. At this point, I totally believe that we're spinning at 1,000 miles an hour around the sun and the sun's hurtling through. At this point, I'm all about I love astronomy my whole life. So I'm watching all this, and I'm not even watching the screen, right? And I'm watching more of the chat, right? And I'm watching the chat, and everyone who's a flat earther, who's a geocentrist, they were quoting math, thermodynamics, physics. I mean, every equation you could possibly think. These people were, hey, this says we're not moving. This says there's no curvature. Everything. They were actually trying to make an actual argument. The people on the geocentric side, which I was on at the time, were saying, were telling the other people, go drink bleach, kill yourselves. I can't believe you breed. Don't have children.
Oh my
blah,
gosh.
blah, blah. That's all they were saying. It was all ad hominem attacks. Nobody was trying to argue an actual argument, a scientific argument against these people. And that was upsetting to me.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm going to go show these dudes. I'm going to go do the research, and I'm going to go prove it. I'm going to come back to this chat section when I've got a grasp of what I need to say here. I've got a grasp of the model, and then I'm going to come and talk to these people. Well, lo and behold, to debunk any theory, you have to first understand said theory. Would that be correct? Would you agree with that? To debunk a theory, you would have to first understand what it says, yes?
Right.
Okay? You have to understand its core and its foundations and what it says, its fundamentals. And then you pick at it. You say, okay, well, if you say this is true, then why blah 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 blah. Well, what did you have to understand the theory first? You can't just say, oh well, this doesn't exist because of this. Well, that has nothing to do with the actual theory. You know what I'm saying? So I started doing my research about the actual theory and weighing it against the geocentric model, which really, to be honest with you, nobody knows much. Nobody knows much about the geocentric model to begin with. Let me ask you, how big is the Earth in circumference? Do you know off the top of your head?
Yeah, 25,000 miles.
You're above like 99.8% of the other people on Earth. Nobody I've ever asked that question to knows the answer to that question. Nobody knows the answer is 25,000 miles an hour, or is 25,000 miles. Do you know how fast the Earth spins?
Yeah, so like 1,100 miles an hour.
It's about 1,000 miles an hour. Yeah. You're right. Yeah. See, you're smarter than your average bear. Let's put it that way. You know what I mean? Most people don't know the answers to these questions. Is my point. You're a bad example, Steve. You're a bad example of the average Joe. But most people don't know the answers to those. I didn't. So when I started looking it up, once you understand the model, it's like, and it really took me a month to start exploring every single little aspect, and everyone I've talked to about it, it's, they catch on to one thing or another. For me, it was water on a ball. How does water find its own level in Earth's atmosphere, but also, also be completely circular around the Earth? And if gravity exists and that's how we're a circle, but we're spinning at 1,000 miles an hour, what's more easily displaced, rock or water? Water, right? So why don't we have a belt of water, bowing at the equator? Because if we're an oblate spheroid and we bow in the center because of the Earth's spin at 1,000 miles an hour, if the Earth spins at 1,000 miles an hour and the Earth is bowing because of it, don't you think that there would be a belt of water around the equator? Doesn't that, see what I'm saying? Why would we be still a perfect sphere and not, by the way, we're not. NASA gives us pictures every year of a perfect sphere that they admit that they Photoshop. And Neil deGrasse Tyson says that we're an oblate spheroid and we're bowed and we're kind of like an egg shape and we're not really like a sphere. So it's like, it can't be both. You know what I mean? Like, there's too many contradictions. The thermodynamics don't make sense of the temperatures in space, everything. Like I said, the curvature equation itself. So all of the things just kind of, but it's always something for somebody else. It's never the same thing. When I talk to people that like, oh yeah, I grasp onto that. That's for sure. The Earth is flat. It's always something that gets people asking their own questions. And I can never tell you or convince somebody that the Earth is flat. All I can do is talk, and we can have a conversation, and I can point some things out, some aspects of the model. And then if you have your own questions, you ask your own questions. If not, no big deal. And go about your day, and everything's, everybody's happy. Yeah. But a lot of people, when I very first started exploring the idea, were angry with me. Like the science teacher I was dating, she wouldn't answer any questions. I asked her to come down to the beach with me. I was going to get a camera with a telescopic lens and look for an oil rig that was supposed to be too far for us to see, and see if I could zoom in on it and find it. And she wanted nothing to do with it. She told me it was offensive to her core. She wouldn't answer any questions. And this is at a point where I was still a geocentrist and wanted to stay a geocentrist, and I was asking her to help me prove these people wrong. And she did the opposite. All she did was say, she wouldn't answer one question. She wouldn't help me solidify any of the geocentric model of the theories of the geocentric model at all. And she just ignored it and just got mad at me for asking, which a couple of my friends did at the very beginning of this. And I thought to myself, what the fuck? Excuse me. I apologize, Pastor. I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
It's my pastor. All right. That was, okay. Let's cut that out. No, I mean.
So the two questions I have about flat Earth.
Yeah.
One is, where's the edge?
No edge.
Oh, there's no edge. Okay.
No edge that we know of. So essentially the model is like this. The model is the center is the North Pole, and the South Pole is the actual ring, is the ice wall that actually, Antarctic ice wall around.
I gotcha.
Okay. So the AE map is the actual map. Like the UN symbol is the flat Earth map. How crazy is that? The U.S. Geological the USGS symbol, flat Earth map.
Right.
Yeah, it's so the center is the North Pole, the outside ring is the South Pole, and we don't know what's necessarily past that. I'll tell you what, Admiral Richard Byrd went down there in the 50s and said that he went past Antarctica, found a continent with no indigenous people, and it was rich in minerals, uranium, gold, all kinds of things like that. He said that is where that's the last place on Earth that you can go and explore the unexplored. Explorers can still go south and find continents that they've never found before. That's what he said. So
Antarctica then isn't the perimeter. There's something beyond the perimeter.
Possibly.
Yeah.
So they're saying some flat earthers believe that there are more continents outside that ice wall. There are maps. There are ancient Chinese, Japanese maps, and other maps that show like concentric, like ice walls with different continents in between those. And we just happen to be at the center of our known, ring, at the center of this concentric, this set of concentric rings. So I'm not saying that all of that's true, but some flat earthers believe that there is that, or at least one more of those outside this, and some flat earthers believe that there is a dome that ends in Antarctica, and that they found proof of that, of that dome. But recently there was a test that they did where some flat earthers went down to Antarctica with this billionaire, and they did this test where it wasn't a test. It was like they went down there to see if they could see the sun for 24 hours. Because they say if you could see the sun in Antarctica for 24 hours, then the Earth can't be flat, right? So because the Earth can't be flat because Antarctica would be a ring, and that you wouldn't be able to see the entire rotation of the sun. Essentially, North Pole, South Pole, sun goes like this, and is far closer to us than 93 million miles, and only illuminates what it's above currently. So that's how the model works. So
gotcha.
They're saying that if you're in Antarctica in one place, you're not going to be able to see the sun for the full, rotation of the day. But they did. So they went down there and it turned a couple major flat earthers, I believe Jaron was a big flat earther. It turned him into I believe he's not a flat earther anymore. And these are for me it begs the question, well, why can we still see farther than we're supposed to? Why is the curvature equation not adding up? You know what I mean? There's too many other truths and proofs that don't make sense on that scale. So it's I don't know. But I mean, then again, some people believe that there are more than one light source too. That we don't just have one sun. That there are other suns that only light up smaller local areas and things like that too. So I don't know. There's all kinds of different theories. I'm not sure. Your average, flat Earth specialist. I once kind of went over the models and kind of decided myself okay, this is the more acceptable physical mathematical model. Obviously, the physical and mathematical proofs lie on the side of the geocentric model, not the heliocentric model. So for me, I was like, okay, well, this seems like more of the plausible reality than the heliocentric model does. The heliocentric model relies on us believing that that the Big Bang Theory happened, which means that this all came from nothing, from absolutely nothing, and we are insignificant in nobody's eye. In nobody's eyes, we are just this random thing that's hurtling through the universe. You know what I mean? And you know what I mean, like. That's one thing, and like I said, the geocentric model, the heliocentric model, the physical mathematical proofs all lie on the side of the geocentric model, other than the fact that what we see on camera, what NASA shows us, and we know that they're good at making movies, so I mean Kubrick did it. I mean, we're really supposed to believe that they were transmitting live audio and video from 238,000 miles away, but my cell phone reception goes out when it rains. Come on. I mean, like, no, I don't think so. And then they were doing it with like a 6-second delay to Times Square. Everybody was like, oh, no. We're on the moon with less computing power than you have in your average cell phone today. But we can't go back, by the way. We lost the telemetry data to go back to the moon, like years ago. But we can't figure it out again in 2025. So, I mean, it makes total sense to me, But, okay, so I wanted to run... We have actually more biblical conspiracy theories to run by Pastor Steve today, but we are going to end this episode. We're going to see you guys next week for another episode of Exit the Matrix. Pastor Steve, thank you so much for entertaining this kind of like back and forth on flat Earth here. When we got to the, I shouldn't have even brought up the firmament one because I knew it was going to lead to this discussion. So, but anyway, thank you for joining me today, Pastor Steve. I appreciate you. And thank you guys for watching. You guys all remember, we are spiritual beings having a physical experience, not the other way around. I love you guys. I'm Eddie Booze, and this is Exit the Matrix.